Hello, welcome to the Chicago Bears Huddle podcast, your UK take on your Chicago Bears. Guys, we're going to talk all things Bears today. Obviously, we are here in the UK. It is, late evening here. Bears OTAs have got underway over in Chicago. And do you know what? It's going to be interesting to see how Ben Johnson works and the rest of the coaching staff work with the whole, those who've turned up for OTAs anyway. Look, it's going to be a very interesting experience, obviously getting used to a new coaching staff for the Bears roster. This roster, obviously, probably one of the most highly rated to come into Chicago in a number of years, probably since 2018, really. I think you look at this, Ben Johnson has a number of offensive weapons for him to mould into his offense, and Dennis Allen has a number of quality defenders to mould into his defense. Now, we are going to talk a little bit of Caleb Williams in this video today. Now, apparently, Caleb Williams obviously, has refused to speak to reporters and skipped a briefing today. This obviously all comes on the back of the story that came out the other day that Seth Wickersham wrote about, where it appeared that Caleb and his father were doing everything they can to get out of being drafted by the Bears. That seemed to be the intention. That the comments are made along the lines of, that's where quarterbacks go to die. Why would I want to go there? Obviously, that was in reference to Shane Waldron. It was not in reference to Ben Johnson. It was not really, I suppose, as much in reference to the Bears organization. Obviously, there's the kind of upsetting tone of the fact that, at that point, there seemed to be a desire from Caleb to go and join one of our division rivals in the Minnesota Vikings. I think rather than the Vikings, it was more a case of that he wanted to go and join up with Kevin O'Connell, obviously, who is a coach well renowned for getting the best out of quarterbacks. I mean, hell, he turned around Sam Darnold. You've got to be some coach if you can do that. But it's interesting that at least for now, Caleb Williams is not speaking to the media. Now, whether this is his own decision or this is a team decision, it can only be left open to interpretation. Personal opinion, I think it's probably a team decision. I think probably Ben Johnson and Ryan Poles have spoken to Caleb and said, look, with the way things are at the moment, with the questions you're going to be asked, with the focus we're trying to maintain, with keeping the sense of team unity, I think we just need to stay away from the media for now, Caleb. Make no comment. Don't get involved. Leave all that to us and stay away and just concentrate on, obviously, working with the coaches, working with, Ben Johnson, working with Declan Doyle, working with JT Barrett, working with Press Taylor, and developing the offensive side of the ball. That, I think, is the intention. And look, at the end of the day, I think the vast majority of Bears fans really could not give a monkey's now where we are up to with this. And I think just want it to go away now so we can focus on developing this roster ready for the start of the NFL season. I think, the whole situation is one I think Caleb will have to eventually address. Of course he will. It's not the best comments that have been made. As a fan, you don't want to hear that. But I think if you look at this with a dispassionate view, with a bit of a kind of realism to this, for the last few seasons, we have absolutely stank to high heaven, and every quarterback that we've kind of got, no matter how highly rated they've been, has kind of not really died, but has not achieved what they should have done. I mean, Justin Fields certainly did not achieve anywhere near what was hoped of him. I suppose the Ohio State curse kind of made for that one, but I think he is a player who is quite clearly showed that he wants to be a Bear now. I think he came in last season, he knuckled down, he fought hard for the team. He didn't down tools, he didn't give up, but there was no Eli Manning situation in the draft. There's been no noises coming out of him in terms of the fact that he was sacked 60 odd times, the fact that he was constantly running for his life. I think you've got to kind of admire what he's done, that there's been no moaning, whining and whinging from Caleb, and that's all very positive in terms of where we are at this moment in time. And like I said, he's fully engaged with the city now. He goes to Bulls games, Cubs games, he's getting involved with everything, he's getting involved with the city of Chicago. He seems quite at home within the city now, and I think whatever he said pre-draft, whatever the intention was, and whatever the influence of perhaps his father was on any decisions that Caleb was going to make, I think we've got to kind of give him the benefit of the doubt now and let him get on developing and hopefully becoming the quarterback we all hope he can be. And now, Caleb is obviously an exceptionally talented individual. And I think he is capable, with the right coaching, of becoming a top quarterback. Now, look, in terms of what was said previously, in terms of where we were previously, I think, you've got to kind of, like I said, not only give them the benefit of the doubt, but kind of realize where we were coming from with the whole situation. Eberflus was just a dreadful head coach. Shane Waldron was an awful offensive coordinator. And, if you look back to how he was kind of treated in that first year, very, very badly. No one watched film with him. No one, yes, he watched film, but no one watched it with him, or no one gave him a focus. As a rookie quarterback, you need to sit down with them and you need to talk them through the film. You need to give them a focus. You need to give them something to look at, developmental points, things to improve on. Yes, I know probably Caleb can watch film, and of course he can, but having that experienced coach alongside you who can talk you through and say, right, in that situation, what should you have done? Right, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Is all sort of stuff that can develop him as a quarterback. So I think, we do need to kind of take that into account. And the fact that, he never really came out and moaned about that. He just kind of got on, he tried, he did what he could. Now, look, the Bears have put Caleb in an ideal situation this coming season. If you look at where the Bears are at now, the O-line has been completely overhauled and redeveloped. Obviously, the left tackle spot is still a position open for question, whether that's going to be Ozzie Trapillo, Braxton Jones once he's fit, Kieran Amagaji, who knows? But we've got Joe Tooney, obviously, who it was officially announced today by the Bears that he is signing that extension. Drew Dolman, obviously one of the best centers in the NFL. Jonah Jackson, hopefully he can get back to his Pro Bowl quality play. And obviously Darnell Wright as well. Now, not only that, but we've added a whole raft of weapons to the ones we've got. Colston Loveland, obviously get to add to Cole Kmet, Luther Burden to add to DJ Moore, Roma Dunze, obviously Zacchaeus as well. Zacchaeus actually, I think people forget, was one of the best slot receivers in the NFL last season. His stats certainly tell you that. Now, Luther Burden, again, is an exceptionally exciting pick. I think the only area that is a slight issue of concern on this present Bears roster in terms of the offensive side of the ball is the running backs. There is a concern over DeAndre Swift. I think there's a lot of Bears fans who don't believe that DeAndre Swift is the answer at running back. However, there is a proportion now that are saying maybe with a better O-line, with a better coach, with a better offensive coordinator, we can see better from DeAndre Swift this coming season. Roshan Johnson, obviously. Kyle Monongai is kind of the wild card. He's a 7th round pick. Does he come good? He looks great on his tape, but that's college tape. I think, there was obviously that difference in level between college and NFL. So, but Kyle Monongai looks a quality player, looks a very, very talented player. So, Caleb's been given every chance to succeed, and he has, I think, in Ben Johnson, one of the best offensive minds in the game at this moment in time. And, for Kevin O'Connell, read Ben Johnson. Now, I think there's hopes, and certainly big hopes, that Ben Johnson turns into Kyle Shanahan or Sean McVay or Kevin O'Connell to that degree as well. Certainly doesn't become Matt Nagy, for example. But, it's interesting that, like I said, I think, Caleb's taken the right decision today not to speak to the media, not to address that. And I think, obviously, the Bears don't want to detract from the OTAs. They don't want to detract from what they're trying to work on and what they're trying to build in Chicago. And they certainly are, I think, building in the right direction. Guys, I'd love to know your thoughts on this. Please, obviously, drop me a comment. If you've enjoyed the content, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching the Bears Huddle podcast. Guys, bear down. Catch you later, Chicago.